Me too. And it's too hot.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are so happy to be here for the book birthday for S.L. Coney. The book that Alma Katsu says tells a terrible truth in the most achingly beautiful way. Wild Spaces. Today is launch day for the event, so we are so happy that you're here to join us. Tonight, Coney will be in conversation with St. Louis's Edgar and ITW Thriller Award-nominated author Laura Benedict. And if you have not read Laura's books before, highly recommend the Stranger Inside.
Stranger Inside.
Yes. Like, why did I've been saying it all day long. One of my absolute favorite mysteries, and it's set locally. So it's just all that much better. Tonight's event is possible because of your support. When you support Left Bank Books, your money goes directly into the local economy. It helps keep our bookstore open, which is very important. It also helps keep the streets paved, the libraries funded, the parks free, and so many other things that make St. Louis a better place. So I would like to thank you all for shopping local and for supporting this event. I want to welcome the virtual audience. Hello, virtual audience. We do have several people joining us, which is very exciting. Virtual audience, if you would like to interact with the event, you can get logged into YouTube, and then you can type in your questions as a comment down below. You can type in congratulations, whatever you want to do, and we will make certain that Shaw sees those. But for the audience Q&A, we will incorporate those in as if you were here with us in person. I'm Shane Mullen. I am the events coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis. We have Isaac, who's running around, who's our new social media and PR person. We also have Bree and Elena at the desk helping us tonight. So we are very happy to be producing this event. Be sure to check out our event calendar for other really exciting upcoming events. Tomorrow night we have Jacqueline Carey, who will be joining us here in the store. So fans of fantasy, be sure to join us tomorrow night. I am super excited for James McBride coming up on August 17th. If you do not know who James McBride is, he is top 2 favorite authors of mine. He is a National Book Award winning author. He is just an outstanding and phenomenal author. And one of my favorite authors to host. So you can join us at Schlafly Public Library for that event. And we have a lot of upcoming events this fall that have yet to be announced even. So be sure to keep our eye on our calendar for all sorts of really incredible things. But now, about tonight's event, the book. Robert R. McCammon's Boy's Life meets Lovecraftian horror in this foreboding, sensual, coming-of-age debut in which the corrosive nature of family secrets and toxic relatives assume eldritch proportions. Alma Katsu, the author of The Fervor, says, "Can a horror story be beautiful? Wild Spaces tells a terrible truth in the most achingly beautiful way." An 11-year-old boy lives an idyllic childhood exploring the remote coastal plains and wetlands of South Carolina alongside his parents and his dog Teach. But when the boy's eerie and estranged grandfather shows up one day with no warning, cracks begin to form as hidden secrets resurface that his parents refuse to explain. The longer his grandfather outstays his welcome and the greater the tension between the adults grows, the more the boy feels something within him changing physically into something his grandfather welcomes and his mother fears. Something abysmal, something monstrous. Our conversation partner for this evening is Laura Benedict. Laura is the Edgar and ITW Thriller Award-nominated author of 8 books, including When I Make Love to the Bugman stories, and novels of suspense, including The Stranger Inside. Her Bliss House Gothic trilogy includes The Abandoned Heart, Charlotte's Story, and Bliss House. Her short fiction has appeared in Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine and in numerous anthologies like Thrillers, 100 Must-Reads, The Lineup, 20 Provocative Women Writers, and St. Louis Noir. A native of Chicago, she lives in Southern Illinois with her family. And, of course, the star of the evening, S.L. Coney. SL obtained a master's degree in clinical psychology before abandoning academia to pursue a writing career. The author has ties to South Carolina and roots in St. Louis. Coney's work has appeared in St. Louis Noir. Huh, they both do. Best American Mystery Stories 2017 and Gambit Magazine. Without further ado, would you please help me in warmly welcoming our fantastic guests for the evening, SL Coney and Laura Benedict.
So awesome to be here, and with a debut author, which is, I don't know if any of you all are authors in the audience, but this is such a special evening because a debut author only gets one first time debut event. And I feel so privileged, Shaw, to be here to launch you into the stratosphere because you're awesome.
Well, I mean, it goes both ways. I am honored also to be here with you because, been a fan for a very long time. So having you here with me makes it just all that more special. So.
Thank you. That's so nice. I think we first met at Noir at the Bar.
Yeah.
Probably at the Meshuggah Cafe, right?
Yeah.
With Jed and Scott Phillips and all that crew, and then came St. Louis Noir, and there we go.
There we go.
There we go. So we have to flash the book. Here is the book with this amazing cover. And who did the cover? Jeez.
You didn't tell me you were going to ask
Oh,
that question.
I'm so sorry. We can figure that out
A
later.
very talented person.
A very talented person did this cover, and the Lovecraftian hints, are just so cool. So as we're just gonna jump right into it, Shane did a terrific description of the book. But Shaw, I want you to describe this book, describe Wild Spaces as though you have just read it and not lived with it for years. And so you have just read it and you are telling your best friend about this book.
I feel like this is something I'm really bad at, which is really interesting because I wrote it, I should be able to describe it. But I'll try to describe it, maybe it'll help if I get some distance from it. So this is a book about, it's about secrets and it's about toxic family. And it is about what can happen when this toxic family, you hold on to them and how it can tear apart your family. This is it's about the loss of history, and it's very visceral. There's a lot of beautiful setting. There's a lot of emotion in it. I kind of feel like I'm tooting my own horn here, but there's a lot of heart in it. You're supposed to. And so just emotionally gripping and affecting, I think. So, yeah.
Great job. I totally concur. I mean, one of the pleasures of reading Wild Spaces is that it is incredibly entertaining, which is something I look for in a story. I don't want to be beat over the head with, just beautiful writing that doesn't entertain me. And there are books like that out there. And some people love them, but I want a good story with it. And Wild Spaces has all that heart. But it also has the darkness. And that toxicity is turned into something not just visceral, but very real. It's right there in front of you, and it comes through on every page, the darkness, but the love also comes through on every page. So Wild Spaces, we're told it's horror. I mean, when it's put into a genre, it's called horror. For me, when I read it, it feels not just horror, which seems kind of generic to me, but very Southern Gothic. And because it's about place, it's very much about place and crazy family. Do you have any Southern Gothic reading favorites that you have ever, come across?
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, like Shirley Jackson is a real favorite. Flannery O'Connor, I mean, like if you had, those are the two that are really huge in my mind. I'm trying to think. I know I've read of others. I always blank when people ask me these questions. I'm like, oh my gosh, I read so much. How could I not know?
Are you a Tennessee Williams fan?
I love Tennessee Williams. I am such a huge fan of Tennessee Williams. I kind of feel like we're soulmates, and at the same time, I feel like if I actually knew him, we'd probably end up hating each other. But but yes, love Tennessee Williams. Yeah.
And also, as I'm reading it, I think, and we'll talk more about the setting, but the beach, and it's in South Carolina, and I think of Pat Conroy. When I think of, if you all know Prince of Tides, I mean, that book is so dark. Nothing supernatural, but it has the heat. It really brings the southern heat and the inchoate violence, and there's a lot of inchoate violence in the characters in Wild Space. Not all the characters, but some of the characters in Wild Spaces. So tell us about who are the players? Who are the players, and about their names or non-names?
Yeah, so first off, there are no names except for the dog, because dogs are the most real creatures ever. And so every dog, everything that has been loved should have a name. So you can't have a dog in the book and not name the dog, okay? But none of the characters have names. And I wanted to play with that structure, play with that element. One, I think it allows people to kind of bring a little of themselves to the story a little bit. He's not just Ian. He is every boy, right? It's every mother, it's every father. So you have the young child, you have the boy, and he lives this like idyllic life. He has a blessing in that he has a family that works, and they love him, and he loves them, and his summer opens, and it's going to be the best summer ever. He just makes a new friend, and they name him Peach after his favorite pirate, and they, and it's a good thing. It's a good family. This is his Eden, right? This is his moment of innocence. And it is very archetypal. And I wanted to kind of play with that fable structure a little bit. So none of the characters have names. But you have the boy, you have the dog Teach, who is a favorite character of mine. And you have the mother and the father. We don't know a lot about the mother. We know that the father is like a natural history professor. And so he very much enjoys talking to the boy about natural history and the land and Brussels and all of this. And, and the mother is a writer. She writes like about history. She writes about pirates. And then you have the grandfather who comes in. And we don't know a lot about him either, except that he's the mother's father. And that the boy has never met him before.
I forgot.
Yeah, so the mother has never met him, or the boy has never met him. And so this is it's a journey, it's a discovery of this boy learning about his grandfather, learning about his family, and also not learning about his family. So.
And how old is he?
He's 12.
He's 12, so
Yeah.
he's just on the cusp of puberty.
Puberty, yeah.
And learning all the things. So I think this would be a really good place for Shaw to read us a little from Wild Spaces, please. And if there's anything before that happens that you need to explain, you can certainly do that before you start.
So I'm starting part of the way through the second section here. And so what has happened previously is, you kind of have this set up the idyllic, it's the start of summer. The grandfather has come in and he has just sort of moved in and has kind of like claimed a place in the house. And so, and the boy doesn't really understand what's going on. Like his grandfather talks to him and he's just like, I just don't understand what just happened here.
And what his grandfather is wearing and what he has in his station wagon.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna share that because that's
yeah.
a little weird.
It's a little weird. It's a little weird. So he's wearing like suit pants. No, he's wearing board shorts and a Ron John t-shirt and dress shoes. And the dress shoes are kind of funny because his ankles kind of roll out over the dress shoes. And he's driving a station wagon that is very dirty. And there's a surfboard in the back, and there is like a wetsuit, kind of lumpy. And, those lumpy wetsuits, you gotta watch out for those. And so there's a lot to the grandfather that when the boy is talking to him doesn't make sense. Yeah, so, yeah. Okay, so, let's see. They have just gotten back from a field trip where the father has been doing, looking for some bivalves, and the grandfather went along, and they're kind of like trying to settle and adjust to this new way of life. So, the house changes. His grandfather's pillow and blanket are always folded on the couch, so there isn't room for everyone to sit together. The small kitchen table where he and his father once dissected a frog stays piled with the old man's detritus, shaving kit, toothbrush, and keys. His father's record player gathers dust. The boy finds those fast food salt packets everywhere. And yeah, they were everywhere. They're in the car, they're everywhere. They're stuffed between the couch cushions. They are the bathroom wastebasket, even between the pages of one of his father's books. He figures they should tell his grandfather they have salt shakers, a plain brown one with a wide base and a narrow top, and one shaped like a dolphin jumping out of the water that his mother calls kitschy and hides in the cabinet above the stove. But the house isn't the only thing that changes. Shadows move in with the grandfather. They trail behind his father like a fetch and nest beneath his mother's eyes. She grows thinner, paler. She stops smiling altogether. His father remains silent, distracted, as his wife slips away. The day the storm comes is almost a relief. For the past week, the boy watched his father move through the house, checking the Bermuda shutters, checking things the boy didn't even know existed. Like hurricane straps. He's watched his mother stare out the window as if she's reading their fate in the glass. And he's paced for days, stopping occasionally to stare out the screen door and whine, his body tense, even at night when the boy curls around him. The dark clouds loom in the distance, and wind blows through the trees, whipping the Spanish moss like the long skirts Mrs. Jones wears when she comes to the library to tell stories of the Gullah Geechee people. The boy can feel this coming thing, a new weight, and though his tummy feels tight, there's a burbling rush that catches in his throat and makes him dig his fingernails into the wooden windowsills of the screened porch. It's the same feeling he used to get at the playground when he swung so high his feet touched the tree limbs and he hung, weightless, before plummeting back down. Even with eyes closed, he can see the sharp rise and deep trough of the waves, can feel the sea foam on the breeze and the tightness of the salt on his skin. His grandfather comes barreling out of the house, past the porch corner where Teach and the boy have tucked themselves to watch the world turn itself up. The old man pauses in the backyard, looking up just as the first drops of rain hit the screen. Teasers, his mother calls them. Grandfather? The old man turns his face up, eyes closing as he breathes deep. Can you feel the storm, boy? Feel all that power? He turns, loping toward the ocean in his black dress shoes and board shorts, his bald head gleaming. The boy watches him go, torn. Teach growls, his tail bristled, ears perked up. Inside the house remains dark, the shutters closed, the overhead light off. His mother carries a couple of coolers into the kitchen, both scratched and stained. The boy watches her put them on the counter by the sink and roll up her sleeves. Grandfather went down to the beach. The moment he speaks, there's a twisty, smarmy feeling in his gut, and he has to look away. She pauses, water drumming against the hollow cooler. What? Leaving the cooler tipped on its side, she crosses by him, out the door, and onto the porch. Are you sure he went toward the beach? He steps out onto the porch beside her, Teach brushing by him to stick his nose against the screen door. Wind blasts through, whipping his hair back and bowing the screen in its frame. The boy catches her profile, the edge of her cheek, the wrinkle of her brow, and wishes he hadn't said anything.
I love that. I love it. And that's about a third of the way into the story. And what is so powerful, well, the language is very powerful, but the observed details of their lives, that they're, sort of the detritus of their lives and their home, and that there's this disruption coming, and that you've put it in the shape of a storm, that there is a hurricane coming, which is, always a threat at a certain time of year in that area, but it's a storm, and it's a metaphor for Grandpa who's shown up in a very stormy sort of way. So I love that. I want to talk about your writing background, but before we do that, I want to talk about pirates, and I want to talk about the sea, and there's such it's a nostalgic feel for those of us who remember, like reading Robert Louis Stevenson and Kidnapped, and even going to Pirate Pete's for laser tag. Pirates were a big deal. And I love that, this boy, he's having a boyhood. He's having a joyous, grubby, he's got the dad who knows all about mollusk and bivalves. So tell us about pirates. What's the pirate and the grandfather? He's kind of a pirate, isn't he?
Well, we never really know much about what the grandfather does. He says that he was a ship's cook, right? And he said, the sea runs in the boy's veins. And, but we don't really know. But the mother, is a bit of a historian, and she writes books about pirates. She's writing a book about Madame Chang. And so she tells the boy stories about pirates. And what boy doesn't love pirates? Especially if you're living at the beach, right? And Charleston is just has a lot of rich history about pirates. So, it's just natural for him to get involved in that and to love that and to fantasize about it in the way that a child does. Because if we think, as adults, if we think about pirates, they're not good people, right?
They're not rule followers.
They're not rule followers, yeah. And so, but he's a child and he doesn't have that view. And so, there is an innocence to it, an innocent love.
And I think that's, part of the whole coming of age thing, is the loss of innocence. And that's hard. You see a child and then everybody loses their innocence at some point. So let's talk about how you became a writer. And so first I want to ask the dreaded influences question. Because I, as a reader, I see, obviously Lovecraft, and you've got a little Kafka in there, and I mean, the metamorphosis is a no-brainer, right, with this sort of story. But I also, your writing is, you use short and declarative sentences. And so what writers did you read that made you want to write like this?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so one of the writers that I dearly love is Stephen Graham Jones. And whenever I read his stuff, like I tried listening to him like in an audiobook when I was driving, and I had to pull over to the side of the road and change what I was listening to, because I can't. Because when I listen to him, I want to write. He makes me actually want to sit down and just like prose will just start reeling in my head. So so there's that. And I already mentioned Flannery O'Connor and Shirley Jackson. But there's also Bret Easton Ellis.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So there's Bret Easton Ellis. I love some of his work. I love, I'm trying to think of my influences shelf right now. Danielle Emmons. So I believe they actually have a book by Danielle here. It's a collection of short stories she's got a story in there called Boys Go to Jupiter. And it's literary, but it is absolutely just wonderful and beautiful. If I think about Emma Klein, the noir of have you ever read her story, Los Angeles? Fabulous, it's fabulous. Los Angeles by Emma Klein, I read widely. Growing up, I read a lot of Stephen King, that sort of thing, but I really enjoy writers who kind of think outside the box. Tate Thompson, if you have not read Tate Thompson, he's got a trilogy called science fiction critics. Really smart stuff though, so I really enjoy his stuff. So I read widely. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can get inspiration anywhere.
Yes.
If you look for it. And it's nice to take different things away from different writers. And that's why, the world building of fantasy is very different from ultra realistic writing. When I read this, I was actually put in mind of some of my favorite crime writers, like Jim Thompson. Okay. And Cormac McCarthy is hardly a crime writer, but in the choice not to use names, and just the very straightforward dialogue, and again the visceralness, viscerality, I don't know, make a word up, viscerality.
That's right, that's just what we do.
That's a thing. But now I cheated a little bit because I watched your interview with the podcast with the Lovecraftian easing.
Lovecraft easy, yeah.
Okay, Lovecraft easing. Really good video podcast where Shaw did an interview and really good questions. And I didn't crib all of mine from there, I promise. But you were talking about Scott Phillips, and you were writing material sort of crime, but not from a crime background. And I thought that was really interesting. How did bringing your work to, and did it work both ways?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so I think, I still love to write about bad people doing bad things. It's a lot of fun to do that. I get to maybe without some of the fantasies in my head, maybe, who knows, But no, I started out writing neo-noir, even though what I read was horror. And I asked Scott, I said, is that weird? And he's like, yeah, a little bit. I'm like, okay. But I spent a large part of my childhood in an area that I didn't understand growing up. And then I was talking to another crime writer who was from an area kind of adjacent to where I spent some time. And they asked me, I had moved back to the area to care for my mother who had developed cancer. And, she was like, oh, I love that area. Where are you? I love that state. And I was like, and I told her. And she said, oh, Shaw, you've got to get out of there. And I was like, okay. And so then I was talking to Scott later. And Scott was a friend of us both. And Scott, I told her what and he just kind of like got bug-eyed at me. And he said, okay, if she tells you that you need to get out of that area, you need to get out of that area. And so what I didn't know about the crime writer was that her mother had been the queen of the state. And so the area was very heavy crime area. And so I think when I started writing, that's just what came out was, all of the stuff that I had been adjacent to.
The vibes were coming in.
Yeah. So it was, I think that's what it was. And then, I developed a chronic illness in 2013, which really changed the way I had to deal with my body and the way that my body behaved and acted. And so a lot of body horror started creeping back into my writing. And then I was working with Richard Thomas. And so reading a lot of the stuff that he had kind of put together. And, I love coming back to it because I get to do so much. I get to be so imaginative and just let my mind go free and just do really weird and strange things. And so I don't have to play with the rules of reality quite as much in this genre. So yeah.
Right. That explains a lot. That explains a lot. And giving yourself permission to use the tools that you learned, in crime writing in that area, and permission to just use the imagination. And I think that's one of the things about Wild Spaces. It's special. It really has a special feel to it. It's iconic already. But no, I say that only half jokingly. And I know that when Richard Thomas actually took the manuscript to Ellen Datlow. And so what happened? When you met, Ellen Datlow is a legendary editor, horror primarily.
Primarily, I mean, you know, this is someone who, like, I just thought I was gonna faint, because, you know, I mean, she's like you said, she's legendary. And so he sent it over to Ellen, and I was like, okay, well, and Ellen's like, yeah, you know, I like it, I think I wanna send it into Tor and see if Tor will take it. I was thinking, I was already flabbergasted and just kind of like, oh my gosh, because when I was writing this book, I was like, this is going to Tor. This is where I want this book to go. Yeah. Really love the work that they do.
Mhm.
And so, this is going to Tor. And so, and I sent it to her with some of the scenes out of order, which I had exhausted myself getting it ready, because I'm a picker. I will pick at something and make it as perfect as I can. And I was exhausted. I just sent it to her with like one of the penultimate scenes in the wrong place, and she's like, "This doesn't really fit." And I was just like, oh. But
Were the pages numbered?
So I use Scrivener,
Right.
and so I guess when it puts it together, it numbers it, and like, yeah,
Oh.
'cause it's really easy
When you're
to do.
exporting it? Okay,
Yeah.
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 Or
So
collating, they call it.
yeah. So, but yeah, and I was like, okay, you know. And then she's like, and then Tor was like, yeah, we want to take it. And I was like, oh, it's going to go to Tor. And then they're like, it's going to be a book. And because I was thinking it was going to be on the website. And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
I was like,
I love it.
I think I screamed and gave mom a heart attack. And yeah, and then I learned that it was going to be over in the UK too, and I screamed again and started crying, and mom wanted to know how they could dare do something to make me cry like this. So yeah, so
That's cool. And
I did quote Ellen Datlow. She was blown away when she read the manuscript, which of course she was. She certainly should be. I know we're going to wrap up here in a minute for questions, but one of the things you and I have talked about, you know, before sitting down here is, you know, when you're looking at what the story is about, you know, what you want the reader to take away from the story. And we talked a lot about loss. And the boy, he suffers some pretty serious loss. So tell us about you putting the loss in there, and what is it?
So one of the things that I really wanted to do with this story was that I wanted the reader to experience what it was like to live in a family where you don't understand what has happened. You have this big event, you have no context, and then the people who have told you are gone. And so there's no context. There's that loss of history, and these huge things have happened, and you'll never understand it. And so, like, and he's experiencing this, like, in a very, in a familial way. But, like, if we lose history, we have no context for understanding. And that's what this book is really about. Yeah. And so when I wrote it in such a way that I wanted the reader to experience that with the boy. So.
You have built in that empathy. And I know as a reader, and I know some of you all have read this already, and you did a darn good job. Okay, well, is there anything else you want to say, or should we just throw it open to questions? Do we have any questions online? No? Well, we'll just have to make up our own questions. Okay? Oh, please.
So I know it's probably a little premature, but you know how excited I was when the Kindle book popped in my mailbox last night. When is the second book coming out?
Okay, the question is, when is the second book, your next book, coming out? And that's what Tor, or you don't know yet?
I don't know yet.
You don't know yet, okay.
So let me ask you, do you mean another book or do you mean a follow-up to this?
I would like to see both, but you know. I don't want to be greedy here, but yes, can I get both?
So there probably won't be a follow-up to this. I think it is, I wrote it and I left it in a place where I kind of want it to live. And I don't want to, I want the reader to take it from there. Does that make sense?
Yes, it absolutely does.
And if I did, like, I got this whole world built in my head. If I were to ever continue this, it would probably be completely different characters, but in the same kind of vein, the same kind of world. Kind of adjacent characters. As far as the next book, I don't know yet. I am currently at work on a novel, and so I'm not sure yet.
What genre? What genre is it?
It's fantasy as well, kind of a fantasy, maybe a little horror, but it's also dealing with family dynamics. All of my stuff tends to be character driven.
And families, I mean, it's a very deep well.
It is a very deep well.
It's a
I
very
mean,
deep
like nobody hurts you like family. Like they are the closest to you. They are the most likely to hurt you, and the hurt that they can inflict can last a lifetime. So, there goes my psychology training.
But also the love can last a lifetime.
This is true.
Yeah.
Love can last a lifetime. Yes.
You created that Edenic family, right? I mean, I like to think there are families out there who are actually like that, but you never know. Looking from the outside in, everybody, I think it's degrees of dysfunction. We're imperfect.
Yeah.
So therefore there's gonna be a little dysfunction. So the novella, that's something I wanna know about. Is the novella having a resurgence?
I think so. They're very easy to read. They are quick, but they give you more depth than a short story. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And, Tor has a whole line of novellas that, and they've just done a fantastic job with it. So many good books out there that I have read and love and can't remember a single title right now. So, yeah.
What is one of your favorite characters right now? Like top of mind? Not that you've written, although I would like to hear that, but that you've written that someone else has created.
Oh my goodness. My goodness. So thinking in terms of with this book, right? There is The Boy in Mongrels, actually by Stephen Graham Jones, which is one of my favorite books. It's another coming of age story, and his longing to be like his family, right? To fit in and just be like them. And then also kind of paired with his, like, at times where he doesn't want to be like his family, and he wants to run away. And like, I love him. And I love have you ever read Nevo? And I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. It's Nghivo. Like, I just read a fantastic book by her called Siren Queen, which it just blew me away. And I fell in love so much with the lead character in that book. The complexity, the desire, the drive to do what you need to do to achieve your dreams, and the outcasts, it's all rolled into one. And Nevo's writing is just so like wonderful. So highly recommend it.
And that was Nghigo?
Vita.
Yeah.
She also has a series of novellas from Poor called what's the first one?
Singing Hills Cycle.
It's the Singing Hills Cycle. They are gorgeous. They are gorgeous. Yeah. Huge fan.
So tell us about, tell us about your particular writing process. I know it is a dreaded question, but we all have processes, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, stories come to me in different ways. Sometimes it's a line of prose at the beginning. Sometimes it's an image. So they started with an image. Sometimes, it's just sitting down and going, okay, I have to write a story. What do I write? But usually, I go back and forth. I will sit down and I will begin to write, and then I'll kind of get stuck. And when I get stuck, I go to my notebook and I start kind of this brainstorming thing.
Really?
Yeah, where I just, I really geek out and I write down, I think better when I write. Like, I just, it helps me process things. So I will sit down and I will write out questions that, and then just like drop down and write answers or write, kind of brainstorming, thinking on the page. And then I'll go back and I highlight them in different colors because I'm a geek. So, like my questions are orange and my, lines of dialogue will be green and, stuff like that.
Is that a carryover from other things you've done in your life? The note taking and the brainstorming, or is it specifically your writing?
I mean, it is, I was in a doctorate program, so I went quite far in school. So the note taking and the highlighting was kind of built in by that point. But I also used to talk, I have a friend that I would talk with, just back and forth talking. And I was like, that's really good for like, coming up with ideas. And I was like, how can I simulate that on my own? And so I just like, well, let's get out a notebook and just kind of like do that back and forth with my notebook. And so that's what I did. And so I'll do that, and then I'll go back and start writing, and I'll write to the point where I get stuck again and make, go back and forth. And I also like retype. So like I'll have prose and I will like, and I'm like, it's not where I want it to be. So I'll just go back and I'll start retyping, and I always end up changing and adding stuff to it. Having another line that comes through. And you talked about like short declarative sentences and that sort of thing, but it's really a rhythm in my head. And there are writers where I'm like, I can't read this writer. And it's not because it's just their rhythm goes against the rhythm in my head, and it's very distracting to me. So a lot of my
People who overwrite, is that an annoyance?
Prose can get a little purple, but like it's more just a rhythm. Like it's a rhythm, and the rhythm, and if I'm reading something and the rhythm just kind of clogs in my head, then I can't read it.
Right. So it has to feel organic
It has
in
to
a
go
way
in there.
rather than forced and jerky.
I'm not a plotter. I can't plot to save my life. I mean, I can, but the book feels weird to me. It doesn't feel good. So I have to, so
So you're not gonna do an outline and then fill it in?
I love to retroactively outline.
Okay, sure.
So like I will write and I'll get a complete rough draft and then I'll go back and I'll outline it. And then I can see like where things might need to be, to have stuff added in. So, yeah, but it's gotta come organically or it doesn't feel right, yeah.
Okay, here's a question. Is there anything that you are too scared to write?
No, but maybe to read.
You mean to read out loud or to read?
To read.
To just read
To read.
other people's?
Yeah,
Okay, really?
yeah, I don't, I can read about monsters all day, but if you start like writing about humans who do, like that scares me.
Like true crime, like
True crime scares
on
me.
scene?
Yeah, like being in the psych field, I have, I've been surrounded with a lot of people who are really into serial killers and, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like, they don't freak me out, but when they start talking about some of the things, it freaks me out a little bit, and I was teaching once and I said to my class, okay, my favorite serial killer, they're just like, you have a favorite serial killer? I was like, okay, yeah. But,
Everybody has a favorite.
yeah, but like, like that kind of thing is the ones who are so kind of outside the norm that I find palatable, and the ones that are more kind of day to day and they just like are just like us, and it's really hard to kind of pick them out. Those are the ones that scare me. Yeah. I have deep feelings for Eddie Gein. I just so much empathy for him. I mean, he was very sick and he needed to go away, but like I feel so empathy for him. But like somebody who just is cold and just I can't. Yeah.
See, I got so freaked out by serial killers. I'm a very paranoid person and I go back and forth. I go through binges of serial killers and, every item in my house, I can picture someone being murdered with it. So yeah, the day-to-day serial killers, but psychopaths and sociopaths are terrifying because you literally cannot have any influence or control on what they're gonna do. How's that for a way to end, Shane?
I mean, I'm with y'all.
And that's life.
That's life. That's the writing life. Shane, did you have any questions? Or?
We have a question from the virtual audience, and then have we done audience?
Yes.
Okay. I had to help some people. So Deborah is asking, and forgive me if this has already been asked, but why did you want to be a writer?
I don't know. I think it was something that was just kind of built in. I came that way. I am a cliche in that, like, I was the kid who sat down at my mom's typewriter when I was like 5 and was like writing a book. And so, my father was a professor, and so like I would get his textbooks and I would mark on them and highlight them, and he was not always happy about that. Like it was just what I always wanted to do.
I like that the highlighter came in early. It was their first tool.
Yeah. So I love getting to play. I love to get to dream in my head and like talk about things
child can have, you know, with a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or somebody beloved. And just that sharing, I think builds, you know, good feelings toward words and creating words. Yeah. So,
All right, one more question from the virtual audience, and then we'll get to the signing. Miranda wants to know what you are reading right now.
What am I reading right now? I am reading 3 books right now. I am reading Something Wicked This Way Comes, because I had never read it, and so I was like, it's time I pick this up. I'm reading Just Kids by Patti Smith, and and I'm reading Habibi by Charles Thompson. I think is his name. It's a graphic novel. So
do you usually have several books going at once?
I do. Like I will typically only have like one fiction book, and then like I usually start my day with like a biography or something along that line.
I like that, starting your day with a biography. That's great. Easy to.
Yeah, and then occasionally I'll just pick up a graphic novel, just to read through. So yeah.
Let's have another giant round of applause. All right, well, I'm going to get Sharpies. If you have not already purchased your book or picked it up, if you pre-ordered, they are available for sale at the desk. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. It's really fantastic to see everyone. And thank you.